Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between training and on-field performance.
I'm Brett Hart, owner of Hitman Performance.
And I'm Dan Labadia, the owner of Jack Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show.
All right, Brett, it's been a little while.
It's been about, 3 weeks since the last time we filmed?
Yeah, I mean, this will be going out a little late. We missed our deadline on Monday.
Apologize to our trusted viewers that we did miss a day, but we're back. We're coming up on episode 100. We're on, 97? This will be 98?
No, this will be 97.
This will be 97, and then we have three more.
So this is this week's episode. So once this gets filmed, it's going out immediately. Usually we schedule them out a little bit, try to give us a little bit of a buffer. If you guys could tell, I don't normally have facial hair or wear hats, so a lot of times it's if I have facial hair and long hair and I'm wearing a hat, it's probably a good telltale sign that I've been very busy and not been focused on my appearance as much.
I've never focused on my appearance. I haven't gotten a haircut in probably close to 2 months.
Yeah. Well, when we did that photo shoot for the photos, clearly
Photo shoot for the photos.
When we did that video shoot with the videos.
Yo, that's crazy. I never would have thought that happened.
Yeah, when we did that photo shoot, we both looked cleaned up. But yeah, we had the camp since we last recorded, the Jack Javelin camp, first one ever. So that was like the last time I got a haircut and shaved because I looked clean and good for that camp. And then I've been in grind mode since then. You know, once the summer winds down, it's my time to kind of reassess some things I need to switch up and make a difference for next year and improve. You know, I got the plyo balls coming out. So that's a big, that was big time commitment over the last couple of weeks. And then my new free course editions are coming out, which is the 7 new guides on different javelin things like Olympic lifting, recruiting, release mechanics, hip shoulder separation, just to name a few. So those are going to be really cool coming out. But yeah, I've just been really locked in and taking advantage of the slower season in terms of coaching and applying pressure in other areas. So it's been good.
Nice. It's good. Busy season, slow seasons, park bench versus bus stop.
Because I've gotten used to it now too, where like obviously if I need a minute, like I'll take like a day and I'll bounce back and I'll be good now. I think that most of it comes from like a lot of mental stress that you don't really know like how to manage your own schedule yet, like early on. And I think that you just get better at it with time. But
yeah, I always fall into the habit, and I know a lot of athletes do the same thing of when you get stressed out, you try to do more. And I think that's my issue. Not more, there's just more physical activity. So I'm trying to do more cardio, more workouts, more reading, more this, more that. And then you get even more tired. And then it just like hits you like a truck 1 week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always talk to you about how I always have had kind of like an obsessive personality. And I think that actually works well for me because I could grind for like 6 days in a week. And then I have that one day where I do nothing and then I'm able to like bounce back pretty good. And I feel like the same thing with working out is, you need your rest. And like when you rest, you should rest and just take the time for your body and your mental to like reset. And then when it's time to work out, like work out hard. I mean, I think it's kind of like that. It's like the high-low method that you talk about, but almost on more of a, like a macro scale, I guess, when you're looking at it from the week or whatever, you're looking at it like, all right, if you got 5 hard days, take 2 like really low days. And then you can mix in a mobility day here and there. But I think that a lot of it just comes down to like the longer you do stuff, the better you get at it, as long as you're able to self-reflect and see how you feel at certain times, or like understanding, like we've always talked about, when you feel really, really good is when a lot of times when you get hurt right after. So like understanding that too, of like, all right, if I'm going to ramp up, how am I going to avoid injury when I get to like a top velocity movement or high intensity much more frequently than what I've been previously doing during my training. And I think that we could segue into the ISOs now, but we talk a lot about how those high velocity movements, a lot of times when you get hurt, it's because of your body's ability to decelerate a lot, and you're much more likely to get injured at a higher velocity movement than you are at a really slow movement. And that's why um, I've even talked about this with throwing, where if you're a javelin thrower and you're used to throwing like an 800-gram javelin, a lot of times if we do ball throws, that javelin thrower is more likely to probably hurt themselves if I was to give them a baseball and say throw this as hard as you can, versus if they were to throw like a 2 kilogram ball and say throw this as hard as you can. Because when you're throwing the really heavy ball, even though it's heavy, your arm's moving a lot slower, and it almost puts like that governor on your body of like, oh, this is really heavy. The external rotation position's a lot harder to get into. So you kind of like it almost forces your body to like use hip shoulder separation a little bit more and use that chest and lat to power the throw because it's so heavy. But then when you get that really small baseball and you just tell them to rip it, it's so light and their arms moving so fast compared to what they're normally used to, and they don't think about the technique at all because they're just like, oh, it's super light, it's a baseball, I could whip this. So you actually have to be a lot more careful with lighter implements than you do the heavier ones, because the higher velocity movements are what causes you to get hurt a lot more.
Yeah, it's because your proprioception is just off. It's like a lot lighter. It's kids that do the plyo ball routines for baseball. Like you see it a lot when they try to do too much too fast and they get the lighter ball than the baseball. It's the same thing, is that their routine is throw, 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 but you do a lot of the reverse throws, a lot of the deceleration work, and that's what strength training is too, is you're training the external rotators, the decelerators in the back of the arm, to making sure that's really strong, because like you said, that's where most injuries occur, just because they're not used to stopping. And sprinting's the same way. Like very rarely you see injuries happen within like the first 10 to 20 yards of a sprint because you're still accelerating. It's towards the back end of like a 40 where you're trying to stop, where your body's trying to slow down, is that you're trying to accelerate and get top velocity. And if your body's not used to it, that's why I was reflecting on 2 years ago when I was doing more of like the fast twitch stuff, how I noticed that if your body's prepared to move at maximum velocity, it can bounce back a lot faster, and you become a little bit more injury resilient that way. Because if you've always trained slow and you're asked to do something fast in a game, that's where it's going to happen, of training the brakes and not knowing how to either cut, change direction, stop. If your body's not prepared to handle that force, and that's what we're going to talk about today, of why I think extreme isometrics are a great implement to start using, to start building up body position and awareness to help with decelerating proprioception and giving you more awareness of what your body's doing. That's where it comes to the injury resilient side of things.
Yeah, I just had this conversation too with the kid this past week when we were throwing really, really light, and his arm started bothering him. And so I'm like, all right, I always shut the session down when they say that their arm is starting to get fatigued. And so I was like, all right, we got 20 minutes left. Let's hit some isos and see where you're at in that regard. And so he was able to do a push-up iso for like 30 seconds. And then I'm like, all right, well, what is your body weight? It's like 160 pounds. I'm like, okay, well, you're light. Your mobility is not the problem. So why is it that your body can't handle throwing light tosses? And it's because when the body's not prepared to, when the body's not strong, it's going to break down, right? And so when you look at it on a spectrum of, and this is, I think, what goes to your post the other day talking about the athlete, the lower, bodybuild, the upper. And this is what a lot of people get wrong in throwing, is because you'll sprint and jump with the lower body. So then your lower body seems to be athletic and able to handle that acceleration and deceleration a little bit better. But then when people lift the upper body, they're going all just like, maybe they'll do some rotator cuff stuff and then they consider that their prep work. And then they do chest, back, bis, tris, delts, and then they don't train it at like an athlete. And so when we're looking at throwing is the highest velocity movement, similar to how sprinting is the highest velocity movement for the lower body, you have to look at the triangle of like, all right, all right, what's that peak, right? So that peak is throwing. So then underneath that, you'll have, say, stability work with like a medicine ball, where we're like doing the med ball dribbles, working on the elasticity in the chest. So that's not super high speed, but it's a lot faster and more athletic than, say, a bench press, right? And then underneath that, you'll have maybe some of those drop catch movements, okay? And then underneath that, you'll have regular lifting. And then even underneath that, that's where I would put like the isometrics, right? And obviously that's not like I didn't spend a lot of time structuring that and planning it out, but like those are just examples of how you have the isometric as your base. So that's like, if you can't do an isometric for your chest for a minute plus, then that's where you're going to have issues going up the ladder. And when you lack that base, you're going to be more susceptible to injury at the peak.
Yeah. And what is really cool, all of this, what I learned from extreme isometrics, I've been asked that question of like who I learned from the most. Like Jay Schroeder's video is what got me down the rabbit hole of all that stuff with Adam Archuleta, clearly. But then I listened to a lot of Dan Fichte's stuff of Want to Get Fast on Instagram, where he talks about extreme isometrics and how it's so slow. You are moving, but you just can't see it. Because in an extreme isometric lunge, for example, that front leg is pulling back and the back leg is pushing forward, and you're pulling yourself in position with that front hamstring. And what I did with Ham in one of my videos is I tied a band. I think I actually left the band on the field because I lost it. But you put the band at a base of a pole, the bottom of a pole. You put it around your front foot, and then you go into the lunge. So what that does is with that front leg, if you're soft with that hamstring contraction, the band's going to slide the foot forward. So you have to pull the band back so it's tight, so the front hamstring is activated. So you're pulling yourself in position, and you're slowly lowering over the span of 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And it's extremely hard. And if you've seen my wall sit and why my body started twitching like crazy, is because when you are actively contracting and holding position for so long, your fast twitch fibers have to activate in order for you to do that. So you're training fast twitch muscle fibers without moving, which is extremely cool. And something that I never really made that assumption to. And I noticed when I was doing those floating heel wall sits and cueing that, my fastest athletes at the old upward, when I was doing it, the fastest athletes, the people that had the best times by far, twitched like crazy. And just because they had a higher amount of fast twitch muscle fibers, and without doing DEXA scans or seeing if they have higher fast twitch muscle fibers, it was just a clear, they are extremely fast, they're explosive, they jump really high, they have 4.5, 4.6 40s for high schoolers, like those fast kids. Then you get them on the wall sit where you tell them not to move, their legs start doing the pedaling really fast. But then you see the kids that are slow, they might be able to hold the wall sit longer, but their mind isn't in it, so they're not holding the contraction as good. They're kind of just relaxing into it, and there's no twitch whatsoever. And so that just gave me the mindset of, well, those kids are just a little bit more slow twitch. They don't have as much fast twitch muscle fibers, so their legs aren't doing that crazy pedaling movement. And you see it with push-ups too, or if you do like a high plank hold, like the same kids that can do plyo push-ups and can do the drop catch benches, and like the fast ones, that they have the more twitch up top. When you do those fast movements, when you hold them there, their arms start shaking like crazy. It's because the fast twitch muscle fibers have to turn on in order for you to hold that position and to be mentally locked in the entire time. And usually I had a group of guys, I never set a time. I always did max time competitions, because the competition breeds itself. Like if you give a kid a minute, they're going to get to like 45 seconds and they're going to be like, this is really hard. And they might just stop at the minute. But if you go max time, that original thought of a minute being the end, if there's no end goal in sight, they're going to push a little bit further. And then we had kids doing, like if I did sets of a minute, they would all stop at a minute and be like, that was hard. But then I'd have kids get up
Mouse
to 4
in a
minutes.
bucket of water.
Yeah, I know that one. It's
Yeah.
like if you tell them like it's going to end at one time, they last a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to see. And it's crazy because you're talking about self-reflection. Is 2 years ago, I was doing all that stuff and I was doing it, and I didn't really understand the why or the context behind it of why I thought it was so important. And then now looking back, it was like the exercise I was doing was good and I was getting the benefit that I wanted out of it, but I didn't really have the context or the backbone to like back it up, to say like, no, this is important, like this is why we do it. And I think that's really cool too, of just going back from what I used to do and then finding myself doing it again 2 years later down the road with my programming now that I'm doing. Shout out Coach Saz at a Velocity Training Center in Minnesota. Like, he's got me on a program and I'm doing all these things, and just I can't even listen to music when I do it, because when you think of it as an intent standpoint of doing a push-up iso where you're pulling yourself into position and holding that contraction, music's distracting.
Mm.
And Jay didn't have his guys listen to music either. And then David Goggins says the same thing of like music's a distraction you have it on the field. That's more of like the mental toughness side of things. But I notice if I listen to music, I quit a lot faster just because my mind is more focused on the song, or I lose intent
Mm.
and I don't have that same feel. But then I put on focus binaural beats and like listen to that, and I can just
So you're
space
saying
out.
you're saying like instrumental is okay,
I mean,
or
I
it's just like the lo-fi stuff almost,
I like the it's the same reason as
brown noise.
brown noise. I use that to sleep, but yoga has it a lot with like the yoga meditation music. And then what's yoga? It's body awareness.
Yeah, so
It's
it's
all it
not
is.
so nothing with lyrics.
Pretty much now is because music is a high dopamine response. And if you're getting a dopamine response from music, if that's all you listen to, rap, country, like whatever, like you get a dopamine response from your favorite music that you want to listen to. And then people say, then it becomes reliant. Or people say, I need music to work out. It's like, I need pre-workout to work out. I need this to work. Like, I need all this in order to be successful. And then what happens when you don't have it? Like, touching on David Goggins' point of like, what happens when you're out on a 20-mile run and there's no music, or like you're in a race and you're not allowed headphones.
I'll definitely tell you right now that in adulthood, that is one area that I've lacked in the most. Is when I was in college, we had whatever was playing in the weight room is what we listened to, and I never drank caffeine, never did nicotine or anything like that. And now it's like when I either work, whether like I would sub this out for schoolwork as like work, or work out and train. Obviously, that's in place of practice. It's like I always have to have some type of stimulant now, or my perfect type of music to like get into the zone.
Yeah, we
And,
joke about
and
like
I,
playing the right song in order to get a PR. It definitely
yeah,
helps because it's a dopamine spike, it's adrenaline spike. But
yeah,
for an extreme isometric, I think it's counterintuitive because you lose body awareness.
I know what you're saying. I'm just saying, I think for me that what happened was when you're in college, all you have to do is worry about school and training, and that's it. And then you become an adult, and there's so many other things to manage. I think that then you start relying on the external stimulus to like allow you to have a productive work day or a good workout.
Mm.
And that's what, now that I wasn't going to really go into detail on it because I'm going to talk about it more as I get deeper into it, but I'm doing 75 hard right now. I'm like a week and a half in. But that's what I've been loving about that, is that now it's been forcing me to, work out twice a day. So I'm either running or even if it's a walk or whatever, but it's like, there's just that extra step and you can't miss a day. So it's like, there's some days where, you might drag out your workout where, like we said, we're self-employed. So we figure out our own schedule. So some of those days that I might work out later in the day, that would be a really easy day for me to either skip because the day just gets too busy, or that's a day where I would like cut out the cardio or only do one workout or make it a mobility session or whatever. But it's like now it's like 12:30 right now and I haven't worked out yet and I still have to work out twice before the end of the day. So it's like you got to figure it out
You got to be
somehow.
3 hours apart too.
Yeah, you're supposed
Yeah, you're supposed to.
to. But yeah, so it's just like that mental toughness thing. Because when you're able to just suck it up and figure it out, it's like then usually what happens is like one of the workouts I will take caffeine, but the other one I won't, because a lot of times I'll end up getting that second one in either later in the day or whatever. And it's just like you don't need it that late in the day. You're kind of just like, all right, I just got to get this done.
Yeah.
But
It's a lot to do with like neurochemistry and how your brain's wired, and people are different. Like they have different mindsets and approaches to it. And that's what I was really loving about Dan Fichter's work and doing a deep dive on all the neuroscience and how the brain is involved in so much of what to do and how to get the output that you want. Is so many kids will just go in, check boxes, and leave in a
Yeah.
workout, and go in, check boxes, leave, and there's no intent and there's no focus on the given session. And that's why I do recommend yoga to athletes and people, just to build body awareness and have that moment of intentionality before it, like a little bit more of the soft energy or the feminine
Feminine
energy,
energy.
if you want to talk about that. But it's important. It's true. You're all yoga is static holds in different positions that you might not be comfortable in, but a lot of it's balance too. If you're not focused on the present moment and you're trying to hold one leg in like a tree pose, say, like you're gonna fall over. You know what I mean? And so a lot of athletes could benefit from doing something like that just to build body awareness. Because a squat, I've talked about before, like every like they can do a set of 10 if they're just starting out. Like every rep could be different.
Yeah. You know what I think is funny, or not funny, but what is interesting about what you were saying about the athletes that are holding the isometric and they're twitchy and they're the fastest ones. I notice the same thing with my javelin athletes is when we do upper body isometrics at the end of our throwing session. The kid that gives up the first, that so he's the worst at the isometrics. When we go to do upper body plyometrics and we're doing upper body line hops, he's the slowest one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it just goes to show that hand in hand that your ability to do isometrics and hold that base allows you to be at the higher velocity movements as well. And I think that that's where someone like me and there's a couple other kids that I work with right now that were in that middle ground the whole I was definitely in that middle ground my whole athletic career until I got out of college and learned about this stuff. Actually my last 2 years when I was working with Kevin, we did a lot of isometrics. So I started building that base. But then when I met you after college is when I started working on more of the upper body plyometrics, the drop catches, more of the medicine ball stuff. And that's what then a year later after we met is when we started talking about like the drive line programs and how Sansone was running them over, you know, COVID and stuff like that. And then that's when I got into the velocity type stuff with javelin, which is how you use, the plyo balls in the course of the off season to build up your arm speed and arm power. So I don't know why I'm coughing. I'm not used to talking this long
Yes.
anymore. Rusty.
We're getting the rust off. We need ISOs for talks.
But it's just really interesting, like knowing what I know now of having that base of isometrics and then from there going into the lifting stuff and then from there going into upper body plyometrics, fast twitch movements, and then from there being able to throw really, really fast being the peak. It's like you could see how when all I did was the static mobility and the slow lifting for the upper body, no wonder my elbow hurt all the time. It's because I didn't have that long duration base to be able to be stable and mobile. And another added benefit of those isometrics, especially the deep range, is you teach your body to relax under tension, which is huge because like, if I'm a javelin thrower and I have my hands above my chest on like two bench presses and my chest is dropped below, it's like you are straining in that bottom position and you have to contract and then you start to get the fast twitch firing like you're talking about. But then you, in order to hold the position longer, you need to focus and relax your breathing, which is the same thing we're supposed to do when we throw. Is like in order to move the energy through the kinetic chain, you have to be able to relax and let your throwing side rotate really relaxed into that strong block side, and then the throw occurs. So like being able to learn how to relax under tension and relax under load is another really, really important part of isometrics. But you could just see you know, how all this stuff is supposed to be. I don't know if you want to call it periodized, but it's just that base with the isometrics is just so important to get up to those higher velocity movements. And you could see like when kids are bad at it, it's like, all right, that's why your elbow is hurting you.
Yeah, and it's not even so much like periodization. Like you can do ISOs every week, every month, throughout the year for the rest of your career. Like you can do isometrics all the time because you're not eliciting a lot of muscle soreness, and you usually feel pretty good the next day. Like, why? Is because it's just max intent. And going back to Charlie Francis's high-low model, is they never sprinted from like the 70% to the 90%, like that mid-range.
Mm.
It's like they never did anything medium intensity. It was either really low or you're in max intent, max intensity. And then what that trains your body to do is to recover at max intensity. It recovers faster. It's because if you're doing high intent and everything is max effort, doesn't mean max weight. I think people get that confused. Of like when you think max effort, you think Louis Simmons West Side Conjugate, you're doing a 1 rep max all the time. Like that's not what that means. Like you can do a max effort upper body day and have the weight be 50% of your 1 rep max. But if you're trying to do 7 reps or like as many reps you can in 7 seconds, like that's max effort. But it's a lot lighter, but your intent to move the bar as fast as you can.
Just like with the band resisted bench press.
Yeah, exactly. Like speed day, like a dynamic effort day. And then the low stuff, I mean, Louis Simmons had low days in there as well of like GPP work, sled work, just being in shape. GPP, we had to talk about it. It's the gap. It's our bread and butter. But he realized powerlifters, he trained them to not be out of shape. And I think that was really important. And I think people get that confused with like the powerlifting world today if they think they're just slow, sluggish people that take the lawn chair out and rest 10 minutes in between sets. So yeah, their goal is to move weight, like as much weight as possible, but the intent is more important. And something that I really liked from Dan, where I was listening to a podcast with him when he was on, forget which podcast this was. I think this was Chris Corfis, like video series they had on Isometrics. It was really good. He was talking about the PIPES acronym. So PIPES. He got that from Jay, and I think it just resonated with me a lot. And I put that in my book because I think I knew it, but I didn't know the acronym for it and how structured it was. But all it is the first P is physiology. It's like literally just how you're made up, like what's your body like. All right. I is intellect, how smart you are, or just how thoughtful you are going into a session. The other P is psychology, your mindset. So just how you think about the session or how you think about yourself, self-belief, whatever that, like what you can just go down the rabbit hole there in psychology. E is your emotional state. So emotions, happy, sad, angry, depressed, like whatever emotion there is. And then the S is spirituality. So that's when you can get into more of like religion-based stuff, how you live your life, or just Buddhism or whatever it is. It's just your spirit in itself. And when you're doing an extreme isometric, and Troy Polamalu talked about that with Marv, that his training was not just physically challenging, it was mentally, emotionally, and spiritually challenging as well. And I think there's a connection there where Marv and Jay are two separate guys from 20 plus years ago talking about the same thing. And I think people get away from that when they think about just the sets and reps and the periodization and what block you're doing when and peaking and like this stuff. It's really hard to do. Like it needs to be a day-to-day thing of what you're trying to get out of it, using that PIPES acronym and like that extreme isometric or literally any exercise you do. Is there needs to be that level of intentionality behind it. And if you're just going in there to get it done, you're essentially just wasting your time and you're not going to get the results you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think that's great for anyone listening to, in order to understand how training can really become like a certain lifestyle for you and how your style of training really does impact a lot of your personality, I think. Because like when you look at different sports, like how basketball players are and how they train is different from the culture of football, and that carries over to personality. And then, you look at somebody that's a bodybuilder compared to how we train, and we go to the same gym, but how you train and how you talk about training, how you think about training is going to carry over to your personality as well. And I think regardless, dude, my throat is shot. I can't speak anymore.
It's rusty. Leave it in.
It's a long episode. But at the end of the day, right, it's like having that training be in tune with your everyday life does impact how you feel, right? You talk about it all the time. Like when your training is off, you get depressed.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world. It's just, I just highly value training, but
Yeah, but
yeah.
but the thing is that I mean, if there's a lesson to be learned there, it's that when you are active and you're doing well, or when you're active, you feel better. When you feel better, you're going to be happier, right? And there's that dopamine response from being post workout as well. Even if you work out first thing in the morning, you will notice that your energy throughout the day will be a lot better than if you were to sleep in and have a really slow morning and be moving super slow. It's just like being in touch and going back to what I said, like self-reflecting of like, all right, how does this style of training make me feel, right? When you do an ISO day or a mobility day, you're probably going to feel a lot different than if you did an SPD day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, being in tune with your training and how you feel. And then also going to, especially if you're working with a coach, is like getting dialed in with your coach's philosophy so you guys are on the same page is really important.
Thanks for tuning in.
And if you enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and review and share the show, because the only way that this show grows is if you like it, share it, and tell your friends and family about it.
New episode every Monday.